Hello, everyone. Um, Welcome to a brief video that I will be doing on this time just the trolley problem. So, in this video, I'll be going over the progression of the trolley problem in a way that it might help for you to conceptualize it all at once and how it relates to the moral theories we discussed in class. Um, so just briefly, now I make a couple notes. I'll explain this diagram as I go along. I also posted this diagram. Um, you won't be tested on the way it's presented here. Don't study with this alone. It's not super precise, but hopefully it should be a good little review and it should help you kind of see it all in one place. Um, so the progression of the trolley problem. So let's say we start here. You guys have seen more trolley cases at this point, but let's say we're starting from scratch. This is trolley problem number one. Um, Either steer right, and you're the driver. You're driving a trolley, and you have the choice to either steer right and kill one person or steer left and kill five people. A good question that usually comes up, what happens if you do nothing? In this case, just assume you can't do nothing. I mean, you can assume that if you do nothing, then even more people will die. Somehow it'll derail and maybe kill everyone involved and more. Or you can just think of it, and it might be even more helpful to think of it. You can't do nothing. You've got to either kill one person or kill five. And are you really killing them? Yeah, you're killing them. You're choosing to hit, you know, either five people or one person with your trolley. You were killing them. I personally wouldn't fault you morally for, killing the one, but it's still a killing. So kill one person or steer left, kill five people. And the popular response is, much like my own. It's permissible at the very least to steer right and kill one person. Um, and why, you might ask. Um, well, this is pretty easy at this point. The consequences, this is just one example of something you might defer to. The consequences of steering right are one death, and that's better than the consequences of steering left, which is five deaths. So easy, trolley problem solved. I've figured out why it's permissible to steer right. Um, However, the trolley problem continues. It's not over there. So the surgeon case is an example of, say, a hermit, a social hermit comes in, he's perfectly healthy, and there are five people in your remote hospital who are in dire need of essential organ transplants. You can kill the hermit. You can just carve him up and harvest his organs and save all five people. So that's one way of first pressing on the initial response here. So notice how the consequences are the same. The consequences are uh, either one person dies or five people die. Same as it was here. Either one person dies or five people die. Either the hermit dies or the five people who are in need of organs die. So if it's the consequences that matter, then it's permissible to kill the hermit. And for that matter, permissible to steer right in the trolley case because one death is better than five deaths. So before I get into maybe the popular response here, I want to say you could maybe think of it, you could hop off the trolley here and you just be a consequentialist. And the variety of consequentialism we cover in this class is utilitarianism. Um, and that's one way of saying you're like, yeah, actually I stick to my consequentialist roots. And I'm saying, yeah, it's permissible to steer right and it's permissible to kill the hermit. Either way, you're choosing the option with less negative consequences. One death versus five deaths. So if you die, I mean, pay attention to upcoming trolley problems, but I mean, maybe they're not really addressing you. You're like, yeah, I actually accept that. That's However, the reason the trolley problem continues is because that's not the popular response. In fact, the popular response, someone who adopts a non-consequentialist view would say, um, it's permissible to steer right, but it's not permissible to kill the hermit. Most people in class said, no, it's not permissible to kill the hermit. Um, so we have two cases here, identical in consequences, but with different popular moral intuitions. So someone who, sided with the consequentialist, initially here might be like, actually, no, I mean, I'm not a consequentialist. I'm not going to carve up the hermit. Um, so I need to find another principle that can explain my differing moral intuitions here. And that's the view that most people take. So one possibility, and the possibility that we proposed in class, is Thomson's killing, letting die distinction. So you need to say, yes, they're identical in consequences, but the driver and the surgeon case are actually not identical where it matters. Um, and that comes into play because they're not identical with respect to the killing, letting die distinction. So the killing, letting die distinction just posits that killing is inherently morally worse than letting die. In the driver case, your choice is either kill one or kill five. I mean, unfortunately, you're killing either way, so and killing's bad, so you should kill one instead of kill five. So that's why it's permissible to steer right. In the surgeon case, it's different. Your choice is to either kill one or let five die. Um, I mean, you have the option as the surgeon to just like these people had the hermit not walked in, these people were gonna die anyway. And if you weren't to do any transplant, these people are just gonna die. But you're letting them die. You're not killing them by not carving up the hermit to harvest his organs. Of course, you're not killing them. You're just letting them die. So the killing, letting die distinction will say, um, killing one is worse than letting five die. So even though the consequences are more deaths, it's still worse in principle to kill one than it is to let five die. So that's your way of saying, that's why I have different moral intuitions here. It's because of the killing, letting die distinction. Easy, the killing, letting die distinction solves the trolley problem. We're done here, except we're not. So someone who wants to press a little further can say, okay, let's fix these inconsistencies. Here are two cases that are similar in situation, identical in terms of consequences, and identical with respect to the killing, letting die distinction. And let's see, if this tests your moral theory now. So the switch case either flip, now you're not the driver of the trolley anymore, you're a bystander at the switch. You can flip the switch and divert the trolley to kill one, or do nothing and just let the trolley run over the five, let five die. Um, Notice how, with respect to killing, letting die, and respect to consequences for that matter, the switch is the same as the surgeon. You're either killing one or you're letting five die. Those are your two options. So, and the popular response to the switch case, just this alone, is to say, I mean, it seems permissible to flip the switch. I mean, the switch case isn't it is notably different, and you should note that the switch case is different from the driver case. But it doesn't seem, different enough for there to be two different, whole like moral moral ideas here. I mean, it's pretty intuitive. It's permissible to flip the switch, and that's what most people say. And then there's the footbridge case. So if it wasn't already clear that there's some conflicting popular intuitions here, the footbridge case says there's a man at a footbridge. The trolley is heading towards five people. It's going to run over the five. However, you're standing on a footbridge with a very large man, and if you push him over the bridge, you can derail the trolley. His body will derail the trolley, and you save the five people. So you either push the large man and kill him, kill one, or do nothing and let five die. And the popular response, if you remember from class, was no, it's not permissible to push the large man. I mean, that sounds awful. Who could do that? So you have two cases here, and you notice they're the same with respect to killing, letting die. When you flip the switch, you're killing one. When you push the large man, you're killing one. In both cases, you're killing one to save five. And you have the option in both cases to do nothing and just let five die. You could let the trolley run over the five people and not flip the switch or not push the fat man. However, your intuitions here are different. Um, so one place, again, you could kind of hop off the trolley and accept the idea here is stick to the consequentialist guns. Um, and say it is permissible and maybe even obligatory to flip a switch, and it is permissible to push the large man. Those are the two options that minimize negative consequences. So the consequentialist is going to take the less popular route in these cases and say, yes, per popular response, you should flip the switch, but per unpopular response, you should also push the large man. And if you're willing to accept that, yep, you've addressed it. That's your solution. And you can do that. However, you're not taking the popular response, which is fine, but just something to note. Something you could also do is stick to your killing, letting die distinction guns and say, actually, since in the switch case, flipping the switch would kill the one and not flipping the switch would let five die, it's still not permissible to flip the switch because killing one is worse than letting five die. So it's not permissible to flip the switch and kill the one. And it's not permissible to push the large man. I mean, you hit the popular response there. It's not, that's usually what people say. It's not permissible to push the large man. But you come up with an unpopular response here. You say, because killing the switch is, or because pulling the switch is killing one, it's not permissible to pull the switch. And most people would disagree with that. But if you're a killing, letting die supporter and you want to stick to that, you're just going to say both require you to kill one instead of letting five die, and it's worse to kill one. So yeah, can't do either. Uh, both sets of five people are dying. You're letting them die, and you could take that route too. Um, and just briefly on this, we go over this in class. If there's a follow-up, essentially. Um, the killing letting to stick to the killing letting die solution here is already an unpopular route, and you're already starting to see an issue as to how killing letting die might not actually be the perfect solution, may result in some unintuitive moral consequences. Um, and if you wanted to really hammer that down, you might bring up the bare differences argument. So if you guys remember Smith and Jones, the Smith and Jones cases that Rachel's presents are exactly the same, except for Smith kills his poor nephew to gain his inheritance, and Jones merely lets his nephew die. He gets lucky. He walks in on his nephew already drowning, and he would intervene, kill his nephew if he needed to, but he doesn't need to. He merely lets his nephew die. Both had equally corrupt motive to gain their inheritance. Both had the same evil intention. They both go up there with the intention of killing their nephew. Um, so killing is not inherent, and it seems like they're both morally culpable. Like, I don't think many people would be willing to say, because of this one particular difference that Jones merely lets die, he's less morally culpable. He seems just as bad. So killing is not inherently morally worse than letting die. And this serves as a counterexample against the killing, letting die distinction. So, yeah, you can take that route here, but you're going to run into another counterexample here anyway. So, um, and Rachel's relates this to a very interesting thing. He relates it to the ethics of active and passive euthanasia, which you should know that as well. Um, so yeah, that's how the bare differences argument kind of continues to press on the killing, letting die solution. Um, I mean, say another way you could think about it, say there's some kind of moral judge, maybe not one whose job is just to enforce the law, but one whose job is to make moral judgments. Um, and say, Jones is on trial. Jones let his nephew die, and Jones says, "But Your Honor, I merely let him die. I didn't kill him." And the judge would probably be like, "So? I mean, you had the same horrible motive and the same horrible intention. How are you any better?" And could you imagine Jones was say these details are exactly the same, maybe they took place in the same universe. What a coincidence, right? Jones says, "But Your Honor, I mean, I'm not as bad as Smith, right? I mean, Smith killed his nephew. I merely let mine die. Um, and Your Honor, I subscribe to the principle that killing is inherently morally worse than letting die, so I'm not as bad as Jones." And the judge might say, if that's your metric for morality, your metric seems flawed to me, because it seems, and most people will say, Smith and Jones are equally as bad. So if there's some kind of metric that, would force you to say that Jones is better than Smith, then there seems to be something wrong with that particular metric, if that makes sense. So back to that's just how the bare differences argument relates to the killing letting die distinction. Um, Something to consider for sure. Back to the switch and the footbridge. So the popular response to these two cases side by side. This is a new trolley problem. This is our this is our newest version of the trolley problem. Um, you need to say so they're both identical with respect to consequences. They're both identical with respect to the killing letting die distinction. However, most people have a different moral intuition for them. The popular response is to say, yes, it's permissible to flip the switch, but it's not permissible to push the large man. So, if that's your intuition and, these both get you a different intuition, you want to defend the popular response, say you're one of the people that takes this route, the popular response route. um, you need some kind of reason to say if it's not a matter of difference with the killing letting die distinction and it's not a matter of different consequences, then what is the difference in these cases that can explain why the the moral correctness is different for the two of them? What can explain why we have two different responses here, and account for that? So one possible response, this is just one possible response, um, is to adopt a Kantian point of view. So Kantianism, this is one of the moral objectivist theories that we discuss in class. Kantianism goes by a set of categorical imperatives. So categorical imperatives are rules that instruct you to act a certain way regardless of what you want. They hold in all cases. And one of them is the principle of humanity, which can very simply, you can put it very simply as never use a person as a mere means to an end. Um, so if that's a principle of Kantianism, that's part of the categorical imperative. Never. You can never use a person as a mere means to an end. So how that can help us explain the difference in these two. In the switch case, you you're killing one. Yes, you're killing one instead of letting five die, but you're not using the one as a mere means to an end. In fact, you'd really rather them not be there. I mean, the test you can run to figure out whether you're using someone as a mere means or not is could you still save the five if they weren't there? So imagine, you're at the switch case, except, the trolley's heading towards five people and there's actually not another person on the other track. You're like, actually, that makes this so much easier. Thank God. I mean, that's actually so much more desirable. I'd really rather them not be there. And at the very least, they're definitely not integral to me saving these five people. Easy choice, you know, flip the switch and have it go to the route with no people, no persons on it. Um, that's not the case, unfortunately. So yeah, you do have to kill the one, but you're not using them as a means to an end. Again, you'd really rather them not be there. Um, so it's different in the footbridge case, different with respect to using a person as a mere means to an end. So pushing the large man is, yes, killing him, but it's not just killing him, it's using him as a mere means to an end, which is never permissible. So ask, could you still save the five if the large man weren't there? And the answer is no. Um, you have no option to save the five. Unfortunately, you have to let them all die. Um, but because this man is standing maybe unfortunately close to a really horrific trolley problem, um, then some might say it's okay to push him over to maximize to minimize negative consequences. No, I mean that has nothing to do with the principle of humanity. You're using him as a means to an end. You're using him basically as a human boulder to stop the trolley coming at the five people. You couldn't do that without him. And that's why it would be impermissible to push the man, but permissible to flip the switch. So importantly, there's if you need I guess another way of maybe understanding what's going on with the Kantian claim here. Um, Again, there's multiple different formulations of this, and it can be easy to confuse them. And I wouldn't get too hung up on it, but you can think there's something contradictory about just choosing this man to violate his dignity, to just use him as a means to an end. So you have this belief that probably holds for all people that you should treat them with dignity and respect. You shouldn't use them as tools or instruments. Um, However, and that's part of the categorical imperative. I mean, that's supposed to hold in all cases. So if you're willing to say like, yeah, push the large man, then you're willing to say, just because you're standing unfortunately close to a horrific trolley problem, that thereby gives me the right to violate your humanity and your respect and your dignity. But why should it? I mean, why why should his, unfortunate placement, the fact that he's standing unfortunately close to above a trolley, why should that give you the right to violate his dignity? Why should anything give you the right to violate anyone's humanity? This is a principle that holds in all cases. Never use someone as a mere means to an end. It doesn't matter, that doing so could save five people. I mean, these people, someone you go around every day with, the idea that you shouldn't just use people. Um, so why would that not hold here? You use certainly like objects every day. You use a chair to sit in, and you're treating him as no different from a chair. Um, and there's plenty of ways you can explain it, but that's, basically a few ways to think about why it's contradictory to say, uh, the people tied to the tracks, they have the right to live. I don't want to violate their right to live, and in fact, I want to preserve it. So, in my attempt to preserve it, I'm just gonna like totally violate this one guy's dignity and respect, that's derived from his humanity and his like a humanity that we all share, regardless of where we're, unfortunately standing next to a trolley. Um, so that's just a way to think about it. We definitely there's more to consider with regard to utilitarianism and Kantianism, and this is posted if you want to just review it. And yeah, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me or come to SI sessions. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys.